The Cellar.
Because we do not know when we will die, we get to think of life as an inexhaustible well. And yet everything happens only a certain number of times, and a very small number, really. How many more times will you remember a certain afternoon of your childhood, an afternoon that is so deeply a part of your being that you can't even conceive of your life without it? Perhaps 4 or 5 times more, perhaps not even that. How many more times will you watch the full moon rise? Perhaps 20. And yet it all seems limitless.
Brandon Bruce Lee was born on February 1st, 1965, in Oakland. Oakland is a city located in California. It is across the bay from San Francisco and happens to be the third largest city within the Bay Area after San Jose and San Francisco. Brandon Lee was the son of the world-renowned martial arts expert and actor Bruce Lee. For the sake of telling Brandon's story, I'm not going to dive too deeply into his father's life. That could eventually be a video in its own right. Growing up, Brandon Lee followed in his father's footsteps. His father worked with and trained him in martial arts. The family would typically move around a lot between the United States and Hong Kong due to his father's career in acting. Brandon would consistently travel with his father and visit him on the set of his films, embedding the seed of curiosity that would only grow larger as Brandon continued on in his life. Tragically, Bruce Lee died at the age of 32 in Hong Kong on July 20th of 1973. His death has always been considered mysterious, as many have speculated on what truly happened. Numerous people have proposed that he was assassinated, while his official cause of death was swelling of the brain caused by an allergic reaction to a headache medication. I have also seen it reported that his passing was from cerebral edema, a buildup of fluid in the brain. As I said, the Bruce Lee story could be a video in its own right, as there's so much mystery around his life and death. His tragic passing ultimately came only 6 days prior to the release of his famous film, Enter the Dragon. At the time of Bruce Lee's passing, Brandon Lee was only 8 years old. With his father now gone, Brandon Lee would eventually move to Seattle, Washington, to live with his mother and sister. His childhood wouldn't be a normal one. Brandon moved around a lot, and constantly found himself coping with being the son of a martial arts legend. As Brandon Lee hit his teenage years, he began getting in trouble quite frequently. This led to Brandon dropping out of high school numerous times. Brandon would eventually secure his GED from Miralest High School. Miralest High School was a public high school located in Rancho Palos Verdes, California, in the Los Angeles metropolitan area. Following high school, Brandon made the decision to travel to Boston, Massachusetts to attend Emerson College. He would major in theater at the school and would appear in numerous stage productions. Following 1 year of college, Brandon came to the realization that school just wasn't for him. But the passion for acting, the seed that had been planted watching his father so many years before, stood strong. He knew what he wanted to do. And in 1985, Brandon Lee returned to Los Angeles and began working as a scriptreader. He originally wanted to stay clear of martial arts films, wanting to pave his own path in acting. But it wouldn't be long before he was cast in his first credited acting role in the film Kung Fu, the movie.
No one will die today.
You wish to save this worthless devil? A Shaolin.
It is said that Brandon had to be convinced to take the role, as at the time he was very adamant about not simply following in his father's footsteps. But eventually, he was convinced otherwise, and in 1986 he starred in his first feature film, Legacy of Rage.
Kid, I've been fighting in the streets for 10 years. No one's ever laid a hand on me. Down in 3! Yeah!
How many seconds for you?
The film was a critical success at the 1987 Cannes Film Festival, and it performed strongly on a commercial level in Japan. The role ultimately shined a light on Brandon's strength in fight scenes and helped propel his career further. Brandon Lee would once again return to the big screen in 3 more action films: Laser Mission in 1990, Showdown in Little Tokyo in 1991, and Rapid Fire in 1992. With 3 more films now under his belt, it's easy to say that Brandon Lee's acting career was on the up and up. He was doing what he loved and wanted to do. In 1991, Brandon Lee was considered to play the role of his father, Bruce Lee, in a biopic titled Dragon: The Bruce Lee Story. But after careful consideration, Brandon decided to turn the film role down, as he felt it would be too awkward to act and play the role of his legendary father. While doing publicity for his film Rapid Fire, Brandon Lee landed the lead role in Alex Proyas's The Crow. Based on a comic of the same name, The Crow tells the story of Eric Draven, a rock musician raised from the dead by a supernatural crow to avenge his own death as well as the death of his fiancée by a dangerous gang in the city. It was decided early on by Brandon Lee and stuntman Jeff Amata that the character of Eric Draven would not do any conventional martial arts moves within the film. They wanted his movements to be unique in their own right. In the film, the character of Eric Draven had no formal martial arts training, but was given supernatural abilities upon his resurrection. This led to the decision to add aerobics to Draven's fighting style. And to add to the overall look of the character, Brandon Lee would go on a strict diet. He wanted Draven to look like a rocker and not an action hero, so removing bulk body mass was important to giving the character the look they wanted to achieve. It was said during the entire production of the film that the crew were all extremely impressed with Brandon Lee's dedication to the role and the overall performance he gave within the film. During moments in the film where it was raining, Brandon Lee would soak himself prior to acting out the scene. And during the moment the character of Draven is resurrected, Brandon Lee requested bags of ice. The weather at the time was already cold, and Lee was barefoot and naked, but he was still aiming to go as far as he needed to in order to bring out the best performance possible. It's very clear that Brandon had a firm dedication and desire to give his all in every aspect of every performance he ever gave. And that now brings us to March 31st, 1993. The film's shooting schedule was closing in on its final days. I wish it could be said that everything had gone smoothly, but that wasn't the case at all, as many on the crew had already come to believe that the making of The Crow was cursed. On the very first day of filming, a carpenter was nearly electrocuted on set. Later on in the shooting schedule, a construction worker accidentally drove a screwdriver through his hand. To add to the curse even more, a disgruntled sculptor crashed his car through the studio's backlot. To say that the making of the film had been turbulent would be an understatement. But no one on set could have predicted the set of events that would transpire on that fateful day in March of 1993 in Wilmington, North Carolina. Director Alex Proyas said action, and the scene would begin. Eric Draven, played by Brandon Lee, would walk into his apartment carrying a bag of groceries. Upon entering, he discovers his fiancée beaten. That's when Fun Boy, played by actor Michael Massey, fired his Smith & Wesson Model 629 at Draven. Draven goes down, and soon the scene is over. This was the second take, and everything appeared to have gone according to plan. That was until someone noticed that Brandon Lee didn't get up off the floor. It wouldn't take long before crew crowded around Brandon Lee, and 911 was called. The actor was rushed to the New Hanover Regional Medical Center in Wilmington, North Carolina. There, doctors operated on him for over 6 hours. But tragically, the young and talented actor and son of the great Bruce Lee would not survive the incident, as he passed on that very same day, at only 28 years of age. So what happened? What claimed the life of Brandon Lee? Well, in the scene that led to Lee's demise, the actor was fired at by the character played by Michael Massey. The weapon was supposed to be loaded with blank ammunition at the time. But as the director set action and the second take began, tragedy would ultimately strike. A tragedy that could have, and ultimately should have, been prevented. Now, like his father before him, Brandon Lee's passing has been speculated on, and still is to this very day. But according to reports, someone had mistakenly left a real bullet tip lodged within the barrel of the weapon. The scene played out as planned, and Brandon Lee simply never got back up. There's been a lot of speculation as to how an object got into the weapon. The surgeon that worked on Brandon Lee, Dr. Warren W. McMurray, would state that the actor suffered from major intestinal and vascular injuries. He also stated that the entry wound was close to the size of a silver dollar, and the injury extended up to his spine. So, was it an accident? Or did someone purposely hijack the weapon in order to get Brandon Lee? We may never know the full truth. Either way, the weapon was supposed to have a blank. But according to the police statement over 30 years ago, a piece of a .44 caliber bullet was removed from Brandon Lee's body. What makes it all even more tragic is that Brandon Lee and his fiancée, Elijah Hutton, were supposed to get married just 2 weeks after that fateful day. Over the years, there have been persistent rumors that Bruce Lee had his life taken by gangsters within the Hong Kong film industry. With the speculation and rumors about Bruce Lee's passing still being discussed to this day, it further fueled the speculation on what claimed his young son's life. What I know for a fact is that an extremely promising young man was taken far too soon. A talent that was only just beginning to blossom. I myself grew up watching The Crow. It was a film that grabbed me and has brought me back numerous times over the years to revisit it. I didn't know initially about the tragic fate suffered during the making of the film, but when I got older and learned about it, it only made me more of a fan of Brandon Lee's work. Now, I'm not here to review the film or tell you that The Crow is the best movie ever made. It's not a perfect film, but for many, it has become a cult classic with an extremely loyal fan base. With the new adaptation of The Crow coming this summer 2024 and starring Bill Skarsgård in the titular role, I felt like now was as good of a time as ever to dive into the tragic tale of Brandon Lee. His story and tragedy has always sat in a corner of my brain, taking residence and never planning its departure. Always wondering what other roles and films myself and the rest of the world missed out on due to Brandon Lee's untimely demise. It further brings to mind the unbelievable talent that was Heath Ledger, a man who gave us an unbelievable performance as the Joker, and then was taken far too soon. All the amazing roles and films he could have blessed the world with. Being a huge fan of cinema myself, it truly pains me to think about all that was lost. But at the same time, it leads me to appreciate all that we got so much more. So please let me know in the comment section below what you thought of today's video, and as always, my deepest condolences go out to Brandon Lee and all of his family and friends.
When did you decide to become an actor? When did you decide that was what you wanted to do?
That's what I always wanted to do. I didn't really ever want to do anything else. My dad started training me as soon as I could walk. He trained me while he was alive, and after he passed away, I just kind of kept at it because I didn't really think about it much. You know how you get started at something, you just continue with it.
Were you worried about becoming an actor because of the fact, excuse me, that your father was Bruce Lee? Were you worried that people were going to just see you as just trying to follow on in his legacy?
Yeah, it's something to be careful about. Because my dad left a really wonderful legacy, and I meet people all over the world who really admire him and admire his work, and really have been very positively affected by it too, you know? And I wouldn't want to do anything to mar that, you know? But I don't think I'm going to.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode. If you enjoy the content, please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps the channel continue to grow. Also, you can check the description box below and find a link to my merch store. Tons of awesome designs, and the proceeds help fund the channel. For those of you that might be interested, I have a Cellar Dwellers membership tier for the channel. It's only $2.99 a month and comes with some pretty cool perks, so if that interests you, then please go check it out. I also have that linked in the description box below. If you'd like to submit a real-life scary story that you'd like featured on an episode on the channel, please do so using the email linked in the description box below. As always, I do all the research, writing, recording, and editing for the channel myself, so anything that you do to support the channel is greatly appreciated. And until next time, I will see you all again as we head back into the cellar.